Do something. Another life cannot be lost by a gun violence incident.
And you should have a right to bear arms in this amazing country that we all live in. But you should be responsible in bearing those arms.
1994 law that strips gun access from alleged domestic abusers is constitutional.
Plans to fight court rulings calling for a federal gun control, a law that's unconstitutional.
The problem is the criminals and the wrongdoers in the state, and the politicians have to learn that.
Congress approves controversial funding bill. In a contentious move that has stirred strong reactions from proponents of arm rights, the U.S. Congress swiftly approved a comprehensive funding bill containing over $25 million allocated for arm control measures. The bill's journey through Congress began with the House of Representatives passing it by a vote of 286 to 134, shortly before the deadline to avert a government shutdown. Subsequently, the Senate voted 78 to 18 to advance the bill procedurally, with the final vote awaiting unanimous approval from all 100 senators. Failure to secure this approval would risk a partial government shutdown. President Joe Biden has urged Congress to expedite the bill's passage, expressing readiness to sign it into law. Despite some acknowledged imperfections in the legislative process, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries emphasized the bill's overall benefits for the American populace. The legislation, unveiled earlier in the week, provides funding for key government departments and agencies, including Homeland Security, Defense, and Health and Human Services, among others. Together with a previously passed bill totaling $459 billion, the funding package amounts to $1.659 trillion, ensuring full government funding through September. Senator Chris Coons expressed confidence in the bill's eventual passage, stressing the pivotal role of a few Senate Republicans in determining whether a government shutdown could be avoided. Senator Lisa Murkowski highlighted the impending two-week recess as a motivating factor for the Senate to swiftly approve the bill. However, the bill's inclusion of substantial funding for arm control measures has ignited fierce debate, reflecting the deep ideological divide on arm regulation within Congress and across the nation.
Do something. Another life cannot be lost by a gun violence incident.
Will save thousands of lives without violating anyone's Second Amendment right.
Let us support federal research into the causes of gun violence.
In the gun debate, frankly, there seems to be a real lack of evidence and information.
Debate and implications. The recent passage of a government funding bill by Congress has ignited controversy and debate, highlighting divisions within the political landscape. Negotiated by House Speaker Mike Johnson, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, top appropriators from both parties, and the White House, the $1.2 trillion bill faced scrutiny from both Democrats and Republicans. Democrats celebrated certain victories, citing the prevention of proposed cuts and the exclusion of abortion restrictions. Conversely, Republican leaders emphasized increased funding for immigration enforcement, including resources for border agents and detention beds for immigration and customs enforcement. House Appropriations Chair Kay Granger praised Republicans for redirecting spending toward critical domestic and international needs. However, dissent within the Republican Party emerged, with some members expressing dissatisfaction over the limited time for review before the vote. Rep. Chip Roy criticized fellow Republicans for failing to secure desired immigration restrictions, referencing a tragic incident involving a University of Georgia student as a rallying point. He accused his colleagues of hypocrisy, suggesting that voting for the bill would contradict their stance against open borders. The hard-right House Freedom Caucus strongly opposed the bill, labeling it as capitulation and surrender. Despite their criticism, they did not indicate plans to take action against Speaker Johnson or GOP leadership responsible for the bill's outcome. Rep. Matt Gaetz, known for previous attempts to remove Speaker Kevin McCarthy, indicated reluctance to pursue a similar course of action against Speaker Johnson. He expressed concerns that removing the Speaker could result in a Democrat assuming the role, highlighting internal divisions within the Republican Party. The contentious nature of the funding bill underscores broader ideological differences and strategic considerations within Congress. While Democrats and Republicans each found elements to celebrate in the bill, internal dissent among Republicans reflects ongoing tensions within the party over policy priorities and leadership. The passage of the bill also raises questions about the effectiveness of congressional governance and the ability to navigate complex legislative processes. With issues such as government funding, immigration policy, and budget allocations at stake, the bill's passage underscores the challenges of achieving consensus in a deeply polarized political environment. As Congress moves forward, the implications of the funding bill's passage remain uncertain. While it averts a government shutdown and allocates resources to various agencies and programs, the debate surrounding its contents reflects broader disagreements over policy priorities and governance. In an era marked by political polarization and partisan gridlock, the funding bill serves as a reminder of the complexities and challenges inherent in the legislative process. Analysis. The unveiling of a bipartisan armed safety bill by a group of senators on Tuesday represents a significant development in federal arms legislation, marking a notable attempt to address armed crime in the U.S. This legislative text outlines a set of measures aimed at enhancing background checks for buyers under the age of 21 and allocating approximately $15 billion in federal funding for mental health programs and school security enhancements. While this bipartisan effort signals progress in armed policy, it notably falls short of the comprehensive arms control measures advocated for by President Joe Biden and other Democrats in response to recent mass slayings. The proposed bill has garnered initial support from a bipartisan coalition, with 10 Republican senators already endorsing the framework, a sufficient number to overcome potential filibusters in the Senate. As a result, the legislation is poised to secure passage in the Senate by the end of the week, before proceeding to a vote on the House floor prior to the July 4th recess. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has affirmed that the Democratic-controlled House is prepared to pass the bill approved by the Senate, underscoring the potential for bipartisan cooperation on this issue. Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut, a key Democratic negotiator, has hailed the bill as a breakthrough that will ultimately save lives. Despite uncertainties surrounding the level of Republican support, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has voiced approval for the proposed legislation, emphasizing its alignment with Second Amendment rights while addressing concerns about armed crime. The introduction of this legislation follows a string of devastating mass slayings, including the tragic incident in Uvalde, Texas, where an armed man claimed the lives of 19 children and 2 teachers, making it the second deadliest school slaying in U.S. history. The lack of federal action on armed control since 1994 reflects the contentious nature of this issue, despite the persistent occurrence of mass slayings across the country. Key provisions of the bipartisan arms bill include incentives for states to implement crisis intervention programs and red flag laws, which enable authorities to temporarily seize arms from individuals deemed to pose a threat to themselves or others.
Core reason for the Second Amendment is to provide law-abiding citizens with the ability to carry a gun for self-defense.
Plans to fight court rulings calling for a federal gun control, law that's unconstitutional.
And you should have a right to bear arms in this amazing country that we all live in. But you should be responsible in bearing those arms.
As for the gun safety bill that passed the Senate last night, it's expected to pass the House today.
The legislation allocates $750 million in federal funding over 5 years to support the implementation of these programs, addressing concerns about due process rights by requiring accused individuals to have access to hearings, knowledge of opposing evidence, and legal representation at no cost to the government. Advancements and controversies. In the realm of armed safety legislation, the recently proposed bipartisan bill stands out as a significant milestone, aiming to address critical loopholes and bolster existing regulations. Designed to enhance federal arms laws for the first time in nearly 3 decades, the bill encompasses various provisions targeting key areas of concern. Here, we delve into the intricacies of the proposed legislation, exploring its provisions, implications, and the underlying debates. The proposed bill seeks to close this gap comprehensively by expanding restrictions to include individuals convicted of abusing current or former dating partners. Defined as individuals engaged in a romantic or intimate relationship, this provision significantly broadens the scope of those barred from purchasing arms.
Sensible gun ownership, but they are going to withstand some legal challenges from both the gun rights community.
1994 law that strips gun access from alleged domestic abusers is constitutional.
Away from adopting new gun restrictions aimed at lowering domestic violence and making gun ownership safer.
Right to bear arms. There has been a lot of confusion in the lower courts over what kind of gun laws are constitutional.
The legislation also aims to tighten arm purchasing laws by refining the definition of federally licensed arms dealers, thereby curbing illegal evasion of licensing requirements. It mandates that individuals engaged in repeated arm transactions for profit must register as federal arm licensees and conduct background checks. Additionally, the bill proposes stricter penalties for straw purchases, imposing fines and imprisonment for up to 15 years for offenders. In response to concerns regarding arm purchases by individuals under 21, the bill introduces measures to enhance background checks for this demographic. Authorities would have an extended time frame to review juvenile and mental health records, supplementing standard background checks. To facilitate this process, grants would be allocated to assist states in maintaining comprehensive criminal and mental health records. Recognizing the intertwined nature of armed crime and mental health, the bill allocates significant funding, approximately $15 billion over 5 years, to expand mental health resources and enhance school security. Initiatives include the establishment of community behavioral health centers, increased access to telehealth services, and investments in school-based mental health programs. Substantial funding is earmarked for school security upgrades, aiming to fortify safety measures and provide training for school personnel and students. Despite its strides towards bipartisan consensus, the bill has stirred debates and faced criticism from various quarters. While some view it as a crucial step towards mitigating armed crime, others perceive it as inadequate or overly restrictive. Contentious issues include the breadth of background checks, the duration of arm restrictions for dating partners convicted of misdemeanors, and the balance between public safety and Second Amendment rights.
Fear of losing your life when you leave is real. It's a real fear.
The Community Relations Board did not weigh in on how it feels about the proposed legislation. Instead,
The problem is the criminals and the wrongdoers in the state, and the politicians have to learn that.
That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.